Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Tianjin again. This is the Tier 9 Premium Riga that is found in the Pan-Asian tech tree. So this ship does not have a radar, and it has this spotter plane that's going to give us extra 10% range and 10% better accuracy on our main guns while it's active. A pretty nice spotter plane. Combined with having normal cruiser dispersion at range compared to the Russian cruiser line there with the Petro and the Riga, those ships have much improved dispersion at close range and much worse dispersion at longer range compared to a standard cruiser. So we just get normal cruiser dispersion here, which leads me to believe this ship should be played a little more at range. So in trying this ship again, I tried to play a little further away from people, not committing quite as much, and had some pretty decent games. I still don't think this ship is really all that amazing, but considering my first impressions really didn't go very well at all, I had some pretty good games. This ship certainly can work. The slightly improved pen angles certainly help the armor piercing at these longer ranges, and even though we don't have the best pen, as we'll see coming up, against cruisers, we do have more than enough pen to citadel them at quite far ranges. It's just against battleships that we start to struggle. Whereas something like the Petro gets some pretty insane pen, where Riga just doesn't seem to have that, and by extension, the Tianjin doesn't as well. The turret angles are a little awkward on this ship, especially when you're pushing into someone, so you're gonna have to be a little careful of that. Again, something that you will have to want to play with longer range anyway. And I think that does all right. Missing out on the radar from the Riga is a pretty massive downside as far as battle impact goes. So we will want to be either farming enemy battleships at range, but also trying to get opportunities to shoot at destroyers, because we still have pretty good shell velocity and our dispersion is decent as well. As much as I do want to focus on the armor piercing in a ship like this, the HE is still something we do need to deal with. It's just okay. The pen is fine for this caliber, right? We're gonna pen over 32 millimeters, which is good, 37 actually, which is fine for HE. The real problem here is the fire chance being 14% base means it's gonna be quite difficult to farm down battleships, or at least that's what I've found. It certainly can light some fires, but you're not going to be burning things to the ground very quickly at all, since our reload is just okay, I think, here. Fortunately, with this ship, we do at least get the plane-based ASW, so we can actually deal with submarines a little bit. We certainly need our teammates' help to spot them, but we can actually drop some airstrikes on them and get a few depth charge hits here, which feels pretty good. Although it's pretty difficult to land those depth charges this update, thanks to that massive buff to submarines' maneuverability. They are pretty difficult to hit now, even when you can see them. GK goes broadside here, and I think about swapping to the armor piercing here, just because our HE is doing all right damage. Into his superstructure, I would be a little bit worried about just overpenning. Depends on the angle he's at. We're certainly not going to pen his belt at these ranges. As you can see, the dispersion is pretty solid, and we get 5 full pens into his superstructure. Don't expect salvos like that all the time, but considering that pretty nice salvo into the Buffalo earlier, and this one here with the armor piercing, it is better than I initially thought, this AP. Not as consistent as maybe I would like, but still, for a tier 9 cruiser, the AP is pretty strong. We'll of course take a look at the build after the games, but I do want to let you know I decided to go top grade gunner and outnumbered, really trying to just maximize the main guns here, since that's all we have. I do miss out on that radar, I'll be honest. I really do enjoy having a radar on a lot of the cruisers at this tier. Or not all of them, but on a ship like this one that does have some armor and some pretty good shell velocity on these guns, feels like we're missing out on some of our battle impact we could be having, especially that Russian radar that is 12 kilometers in this game. That's a pretty powerful thing to be missing out on. And while this spotter plane can be pretty impactful, I don't think it comes close to what a radar is going to offer us. And you'll notice that the spotter plane is pretty short. I'm trying to get the reload down as much as I possibly can as well with this build, but since we're reliant on that spotter plane for our best dispersion, and we want to be catching people's broadsides with this plane, it's not very long. It's like 35 seconds, 40 seconds. We'll see that at the end as well, but it doesn't take much time for this spotter plane to actually run out. So you do need to pick your timing carefully. At least it does reload relatively quickly if you're taking things like Eye in the Sky, allowing you to get it back sooner. As well as just being a lot of spotter planes available to you. It's a little bit like the dilemma on some French ships that have a reload booster. Should I try and optimize my reload booster placement on a French ship when I'm playing one? Or should I just be spamming them whenever they're available to me? Well, it's a bit of a mix, right? You should be trying to get the most value out of them, but you don't want to hold them to the end of the game because that's a lot of potential damage that you could have had that you just straight up missed out on. And I kind of see this spotter plane in the same way. You can see that the salvos do look a little bit better. I mean, 10% is quite a bit, but also not enough to fully counteract some of the wonky dispersions that we will see. But it is still a nice boost to our damage, and considering we have so many of them, yeah, we do want to be using them. But spotter plane already out. Those few salvos already done. It comes back though within like 50 seconds or so not too bad. Managed to take out the Vladivostok here. Now we're pushing into a very, very bad position. Mainly because the Ohio has shown back up on our broadside. That's a pretty scary thing to deal with. And the Yamato is pushing out to the north. So we are just pushing into a crossfire here. So I want to highlight the armor here. So we've looked at the guns. You're going to see throughout this video the guns doing really well or poorly. That's just kind of how it goes when you're more reliant on armor piercing, I guess. But the armor here holds up relatively well. Certainly we have a much bigger superstructure than the Petro does have, so we're not as tanky as a Petro, but we do fortunately have that option of dodging the Ohio there. The slowdown and turnout helped us, and barely don't give enough broadside for the Yamato to Citadel us. He actually brackets us, so unfortunate for him. He got pretty unlucky with dispersion there, but you'll see that when he is able to hit us, if we're angling properly, it's actually not going to do all that much damage to us. This is kind of the power of an upper belt that can auto bounce 460 millimeter guns. Although I want to highlight that that upper belt is 35 millimeters thick. And so that means if you come up against a Shikishima or a Satsuma, an incomparable, anything with those 508, 510 millimeter guns, they overmatch 35 actually. So you can't do these sorts of things against every battleship in the game. It's very nice to have that auto bounce opportunity on your upper belt. So then you go like this. You kind of give enough broadside that the enemy battleship thinks about shooting you in the side, and then you just kind of angle in. And you hope they don't hit your superstructure too much, and you bounce a lot of shells, man. It's pretty good. Notice our damage here climbing as well. At closer ranges, this AP with the slightly improved pen angles is doing pretty good work against this Yamato. I will say when I was playing this game, I was a little disappointed we didn't Citadel the Yamato broadside. But after watching it back and checking out some of the pen values, also look at how little damage we just took there. Pretty crazy. But the pen values don't allow us to full pen or pen the Citadel of a Yamato at 8 kilometers, unfortunately. It's we'd have to get closer, around 5 or 6 kilometers is where we'd actually pen a Yamato Citadel flat broadside. So unfortunate. I was aiming for the cheek Citadel as well, but I don't think either we weren't hitting quite right, or maybe the shorter fuses helped us to get full pens, but not actually get through into the cheek part of that Citadel. But hey, we at least get ourselves a victory here. Feels pretty good. And we did a decent job of pushing and doing a good job of just having battle impact for our team. It's harder without that radar. Notice the Laterable there, top score, bottom tier DD. That's pretty tough, man. I've pointed that out a couple of times in the past. Just got to do it every time because that's rare. Destroyers are kind of hard to play, especially in up tiers with a lot of radar around. And to get top score is pretty difficult if you're that bottom tier DD. Okay, moving on, our second game. A very good match as well. And look at that dispersion. That feels pretty nice, man. That is what you're getting this ship for. With that plane, you're wanting that level of dispersion. So this ship can hit cruisers pretty hard. Battleships, it struggles a little bit with pen on, I think. But as you're going to see, the cruisers with a Citadel, you're pretty dangerous. So people have to respect this ship if they're going to go broadside to it, at least if they're in a cruiser, which is nice. And that's really what I was looking for out of this ship. In the first impressions, I didn't really get the opportunity or missed my shots, whatever, got unlucky, whatever it was. But I mean, salvos like that feel pretty good. And that's what you really need to see out of a ship like this. And it can do it. So unfortunate to give up that radar. I am harping on that a lot in this video, I know, but it's a powerful utility, man. So if we're going to give that up, we want to have some strengths in return. So having this accuracy is quite nice and almost required if we are going to give up that radar. Okay, moving forward, pushing in a little bit more. Our team has thoroughly lost the A cap. So as I was kind of playing towards C here a little bit more, positioned myself just outside of the B cap, waiting for the right opportunity to push in here. With defensive fire up, we do manage to take out that squadron of planes. And you're going to see later on that the A almost does nothing to a squadron of planes, even with defensive fire. So, love it. Not a lot of consistency there, unfortunately. Or gameplay. But into this Awami broadside also, just getting the shatters, right? So I should be aiming for upper belt full pens and just going for that if I'm looking for consistent damage here. Otherwise, if we aim too low, a lot of it'll shatter, right? And then we're not going to be doing the damage we want. As he angles, probably should swap over to the high explosive. This isn't a ship that I want to be just shooting AP in. Yeah, we are missing out on quite a bit of damage against this Awami. So you want to be swapping ammo types when people are angled. And honestly, sometimes against battleships that are broadside even, I would consider the HE, just considering how little pen these guns have against battleship armor. It's still good pen, don't get me wrong, but battleship armor is pretty strong on their broadsides. The other advantage these guns have, I've talked a little bit about it, is the shell velocity. But out to range, the shell velocity is pretty well sustained. And with that spotter plane, we get that nice extra dispersion buff. That's a nice salvo into the Algerie there. And very nice to be able to catch cruisers broadsides at longer ranges. That allows us to not always have to play up close. And that can be quite difficult as a tier 9 cruiser, even one that has some decent armor like this, especially if you get into some up tiers. Fortunately here, we don't have to deal with an up tier here, so as a top tier ship, we need to pull our weight, and now pushing into the B cap here. We're getting into the win or lose portion of this game, so we have to try and carry a little bit. Defensive fire takes out 2 planes before that drop, where before it took out the whole squad. Like I said, it's not something you can necessarily count on. I would probably recommend Hydro anyway, just to help you against subs, because they're so ridiculous this patch, but either way, you're kind of screwed if one of them decides to come after you. It's also why I started kited. I try to start angled away, especially in a ship like this where I don't have a radar. I don't want to fully commit to something until I know where enemy ships are positioned. And then I'll consider pushing in, or flanking, or getting to the other side of the map, or just trying to take the B cap here. The enemy DD does open up on us, so I was a little worried about torpedoes coming our way. So I decided to accelerate and turn, but fortunately we don't have to deal with any of his torps. The carrier torps that are going to be the problem here. And a Florida on our broadside. I think we got pretty lucky that he didn't shoot at me while I was flat broadside to him. That certainly could have been quite bad. Now Florida, being a lower tier battleship, especially one that isn't well known for being good armored, gives us some citadels, man. That feels pretty nice. And that's what you're going to get more out of a Petro type ship against tier 10 battleships, right? This is being a tier 9 with those weaker guns, unfortunately it does not get there. So 150k, 7 citadels already, and we get a broadside look at the carrier. Now, if you know about Yorktown armor, you're probably laughing at this point. I hadn't looked at the armor of this particular carrier before. We'll show that later in port, but yeah, safe to say the Citadel is well below the waterline. In the moment, I was pretty pissed off. I'm not gonna lie with you guys. I was pretty mad that I finally caught up to this carrier that's been attacking me so much this game, and I can't do damage to him when he's broadside. Very fun. Great game design. Even now, I'm a little pissed off about it, I'm not gonna lie. And this is recording time, much later. Not even playing the game. Yeah, okay. We'll ignore that, focus on the positives, I guess. Here, I certainly should be using the high explosive to deal with this Florida, especially while he's angled like this. And I mean, I'm getting a little greedy here. I'm thinking, oh, slightly improved pen angles. Yeah, we still get 6 shatters. Definitely swap to the HE. It's not like gonna be like Des Moines or something like that. it's still something where we want to be using that HE to deal with angled targets. Although the game is a confusing one, it is not consistent, and therefore it is very difficult to learn how to play this game. I understand that. So how do we Citadel him at that angle? No Citadels on the flat broadside CV. Angled battleship. Sure, here's a Citadel. Anyways, I'm not going to dwell on that too much. That is just World of Warships for you. But I want to show you these two games because this ship performed pretty well. Unfortunately, this one ends in a loss. But still, 190 here. That was a pretty solid match, especially given how much focus we got in this one. So to me, this seems like an all-right premium ship. Fortunately, it is available in the premium shop for regular purchase, not just for loot boxes in the armory. But it's just okay as a tier 9. I don't think it's really all that amazing. The dispersion buffed plane is quite nice to see, but losing radar is a little too much for me. The armor still does hold up, and the guns are very powerful against cruisers. Fortunately, they will do some good damage there. Although against battleships, can be a little lacking in the pen. The better dispersion than the Riga is also appreciated at longer ranges. Some of those Russian cruisers can feel a little wonky at longer ranges, especially considering the game's rather passive these days, so you will be using that range a little bit more than normal. And as time goes on, I expect that to continue. So having better dispersion than a Riga at range is nice, even if it is slightly worse at closer ranges compared to the Riga. Now, I know I said I wouldn't dwell on it, but there you go. Soak it in. Yep. Okay. The build that I was running here looks a little something like this. Lacking on grease the gears, a little awkward, but I wanted to have gun feeder to allow me to swap ammo types a little easier. Eye in the sky giving us 50% reduced cooldown on that plane, which is kind of needed since this ship or this plane doesn't last very long. So having a few extras is nice. Superintendent for our healing mostly. Getting more health is nice, but also, hey, we can spam that plane a little bit more. Concealment and outnumbered and top grade. Maybe you don't need concealment. You could go into some other things. Super heavy AP only gives you like 300 alpha damage on your AP. Maybe worth it, maybe not. There's some other things you could certainly take instead of concealment if you're wanting to run a more range-focused build. That will also proc top-grade gunner a little sooner because this is all about an enemy ship being spotted within your concealment range. So that is something you can play around with. But that is the build that I was running here, and these are the upgrades on the ship. Notice I'm also running Spotter Plane Mod 1 here to get, again, as much value as I can out of this thing. And 39 second with a 47.5 second cooldown time. It at least comes back quickly with this build, but it doesn't last very long. So you got to make your shots count when you are using it. So that's going to do it for the Tianjin. I hope you guys enjoyed this second look at it. I tried to play this ship a little bit more to give you some more final thoughts on this ship, at least with some more playtime than just the first impressions. Again, that's what I'm trying to do this year. Play some of these ships coming into the game a little more than just the first impressions. That way I have a better look at it for you. I think I overdid it with the Sicilia just because I thought that ship was going to be good and it just wasn't. So I kept trying to make it work. So not doing quite as much with the Tianjin, but still got some good games, and I think it's a pretty okay premium. Not amazing, but certainly not as bad as I thought it was with the first impressions. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.